So hey guys, I'm here with Mike, and Mike the Airbrush guy. How do I introduce you probably?
So I'm Mike from Mike's Brush.
Mike's Brush.
A lot of people know it. The channel used to be called Mike Flores, so that's my name. And yeah, I run Mike's Brush out of this little shop. And
yeah, it's a really nice setup on like a garage in the backyard, and it's separate from the house, which I really like because some people have the house attached to a garage, and all the smell gets in.
Create some problems for sure.
You can pretty much do whatever you want here. I see flakes on the wall. So if you use full-size spray guns, you do like the clear coat here.
Yeah, we just clear coated that Camaro in here a few days ago.
Okay.
So.
And actually, one of the things I'm surprised. So we just recently picked up the Segola, the brand we carry.
Oh yeah.
And they're not so popular in the United States. If you go to any store, they're not there. If you go to just Google online, our website now comes up first because they're not there. But I see so many people using them. I went to the guy yesterday in Colorado Springs, and I'm a big fan of Segolas.
Yeah, Segola is really good. I like it. Yeah.
So behind this camera, you told me a few things about yourself already. So you started at 14 on the flea market?
Yeah,
airbrush.
So I started airbrushing when I was 14, and I pretty much just had a little table, a chair just like this, a really loud pancake compressor, and one airbrush. And I had one or two actually of those Createx starter sets. So when certain people would come up and ask for purple, I remember I had to mix it real quick because I didn't actually have a purple, so I had to mix the red and the blue and kind of get it really, quick together and stuff. And that's kind of how I started. And luckily, family and friends kind of helped me along. But that's kind of how I was. My cousin took me, and my cousin kind of hung out with me and watched me all day. And we were there, and somebody provided us with a little a shade, because we didn't have no shade. And by halfway through the day, we were just sweating, and ever since then, I just kind of been doing the markets and stuff.
What made you get into it in 14? It's like the desire to be artist?
So I've always had a natural drawing since I was a kid. I used to like to draw lowriders as like a little 5-year-old, 6-year-old, and what really got me into airbrushing though is visiting my brother. He's in the Air Force, or he was in the Air Force, and he was stationed in the Gulfport in Mississippi, and in Biloxi, Mississippi. So we went to go visit him one time, and he took us down to Florida, and down in Pensacola, right on the beach, there was a guy airbrushing in a hut, and I don't remember the name or anybody, but I got stung by a jellyfish. Right, so my whole leg was like on fire and stuff. We were trying to figure out how to get rid of it, and then I'm sitting on the beach rubbing sand on myself, and I look over, see the hut, walk over, and I see him and spraying shirts. And ever since then, I was just like, it was like eye-opening to me because everything had been with a pencil or a pen, and it was so limited. But seeing him spray the bright colors and make it look really, pretty, it really kind of opened up my eyes to it. And from there, it just kind of always wanted one. My brother got one, and left it behind one time when he was on leave. And ever since then, I just kind of picked it up and practicing. And that was like when I was 11, 12. Practiced for a couple of years, read some books, and then just decided, why not? Like everybody else this is what they do, how they make money. So I kind of went out for it.
No teachers, and 20 years ago, obviously no videos on YouTube.
There was no YouTube, no.
All books and self-taught.
Books, having to wait for books to come into the library. So going in and asking, and then there's only one copy, so you have to wait for somebody else to return it, and then kind of waiting for that and trying to understand what the artist was saying and interpret that into something that I could do was kind of the hardest part.
Oh, that's much better.
Yeah.
That's when I'm gonna have a nice sound. So yeah, books, and it's for new generation who gets into airbrushing now, it's much easier because of YouTube, all the videos. You do a lot of videos actually.
Yeah, I do a lot of videos, and that was kind of the point when we started making the videos. I don't know if you ever are familiar with Jaime Rodriguez, but back when YouTube started, he was kind of doing the videos and kind of teaching people and showing tips and tricks. I was working down in Houston at the time at the Airbrush store down with Mark Pate. I don't know if you've ever met him, but cool guy working down there. So we started making the Airbrush videos, but just kind of showing what, you know, working in an airbrush shop is like, you know, pranks on each other, some cool artwork and stuff like that. And then, you know, but once Jaime died, it was kind of that whole thing of we need somebody to kind of carry on that mantle, because people just started asking. It was like in the comments, it just started happening. Like, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do you airbrush a shirt? You know, and it was just kind of that natural thing where it was just like, there's nowhere to get answers still. And people, you know, once Airbrush Action Magazine too, that kind of went away. It just became even a more big flood. And so even till today, like I just answered messages this morning, people asking, you know, just really technical stuff. So it's, you know, it used to be just what kind of paint do you use, but now it's like, well, how can I reduce the paint to get it to work like this and stuff like that. So it's just kind of been that natural evolution. And it's just been that thing where people just keep telling me airbrush is that dying art. It's that dying art. And I hated hearing it all the time because it's like, it's so amazing. It shouldn't, there's no way it should die.
I'm trying hard to keep it alive. And on behalf of the community, I really appreciate what you're doing with all the videos and helping people. It's really important to get right tools, right basic knowledge on how to do things too. Because if you get it wrong, even, you know, wrong product, wrong paint, not reduced correctly, you won't have the right feeling of, you know, the airbrushing itself. You just don't give up on it, because it's not mine. It's not working, the paint is not spraying correctly. So, you know, watching guys like Mike on YouTube and just learning these basic things really helps. And it's really good. So 20 years ago, and that's actually going to be an interesting conversation, because you have over 20 years experience with Createx.
Yeah.
Let's talk about them, how they evolved, how they changed from 20 years. 20 years ago, I think it was only airbrush colors, right?
There was no wicked line, there was no illustration, there was no reducer. I remember that was a tough one with no reducer, because sometimes you would get a bottle that was just, you know, a little bit stiffer than you would like. The paint was just a little bit thicker. That would happen sometimes, very rare, but you know, you'd have to use water, be real careful with distilled water, and just, you know, trying your best to get a good flow of the paint was really hard back then. Nowadays, it seems like they've gotten a lot of their mixtures down where it's just like straight out of the bottle. A lot of the paints, you could spray them real good. But having the reducer for more fine detail work, especially like automotive type stuff, it's just amazing. Back then, it was one of the only paints that you could really use for shirts. So it was hard to actually find another one. And when they did come up, like Aquaphor and some of the other lines, I did try them, but what makes Createx, you know, better than all them or more easy, it was just at the local art store. Hobby Lobby carries it. You know, you could just, it was everywhere. So when I needed a color, I had options to find that color. And so them making it easy to find everywhere was just, you know, the best. Because sometimes, you know, at a market, you buy enough red, you think you buy enough red, and then that whole day you spend painting hearts with names. So, you know, your whole 32 ounces of red that you bought, it'll be gone. But you have to go back tomorrow. And chances are you're going to probably paint another 100 hearts that next day. So you need more red. And sometimes it's not an option. It's just like, oh, I'm going to, you know, go try this new paint or try something else that's not going to work. You know, you have to find the good stuff, especially when people get used to it, right? Because the whole thing about Createx is that it doesn't fade. And that was also a big stigma, having to fight at the beginning, because there would be airbrush artists that didn't use Createx. And when people would take their shirt home, wash it, it would fade. Then they would bring it back to me like, hey, and I'd be like, I didn't paint that shirt, but I could respray it for you. And then if we press it, take it home, and I bet you it'll last. And nowadays I have customers that, you know, they have shirts that the shirt is falling apart, like, you know, the seams and stuff, but the paint and the design is still looks. Yeah.
So fluorescent is one of the most sensitive.
Yeah, it's, if you spend a lot of time in the sun, fluorescent will definitely get chewed up.
Okay, awesome. And when Createx introduced their new paint lines, like illustration colors, Wicked, did it improve your ability to make details? I know the original, the Createx colors, they're great paint. We still sell a bunch of it, but it's not really designed for like the super thin nozzle airbrush.
So the Wicked line, you could tell right away it was like, what would be the word? Strained, like it was more fine. It was sprayed smoother. And them coming right out of the bat and saying like, you could spray this on a car. It's designed to be on a car. You know, it'll last, it won't fade. That was also a big thing to be able to sell customers on it for their vehicles, because a lot of people would be like, no, it's not gonna fade. It's gonna fade if you don't use automotive base. You know, you have to use House of Colors or this other stuff. And, you know, I did, for a lot of years we used like, you know, the urethane enamels for anytime I did vehicles. But anybody that uses that stuff knows that it kind of takes a toll on your airbrush. You have to keep cleaning it. Your hands will constantly be dry, you know, or if you don't use gloves, or you'll have stains. You know, it's really hard to get rid of stains that are, you know, urethane. So, and it, you know, breathing it.
Especially back in the time, I think the TFE seals, the Teflon seals weren't introduced yet, so you had pretty much rubber seals all day in Airbrush. It was really bad. And then breathing it too, you always had to have a mask on, which it's not bad having to wear a mask, but you know, it's just annoying sometimes in some shops during the summer. It's hot, so you have the mask and then you're just sweating, and it wasn't always very convenient. So. Yeah, I understand that. And you know, I don't have 20 years experience. I started in Airbrush for about 12 years ago. Maybe more than that. Time is running. No, more than that. Wow, time is running. Yeah.
It adds up faster than you think.
But yeah, we had a similar kind of situation. We had 14 colors of local manufacturing, because I'm from Russia. That's where my accent from, and originally we started airbrushing there in the studio. 14 colors. That's what we had. 14 colors of acrylic paints reduced by alcohol. So there's no special use. There's no alcohol for it. And you know, when I got introduced to Createx with all their options of all the colors and reducers, now we have like 5 different reducers for, you know, paints. You can get spoiled by just being able to figure out what you need for particular humidity and, you know, temperature, everything else. It's really great. So it's being airbrushing today, starting airbrushing, it's really good. So you can spoil it.
Yeah, it's there's no excuse today if you want to produce something nice why you can't. If you have time and you know, a little bit of time to learn how to airbrush, then beyond there it's just your imagination, really, because nowadays there's a lot of resources for sure.
Awesome. And speaking of tools, I saw you were using Sparmox, Seagull airbrushes, Tapash, Talon, all the mixture of different brands. Anything you want to say about that, you know, experience wise? What's good for beginners? What's good for more improved things?
So I'll go based on, depending on how much you think you're gonna like it. So if you think it's something that you're like, I really want to paint shoes, I would say just go ahead and go get like a nice $100, $150 airbrush. You know, spend the money up front for a tool that's gonna last you. If you're not sure, if you're just like, maybe I don't know, I just want to try it, maybe it looks easy, but I'm not, you know, I don't know. You know, buying one of those little cheap $20 airbrushes, or going to Harbor Freight and getting a cheap airbrush. A lot of people hate me for this, but just to try it, because a lot of people will try it and it's hard for them to get that eye and hand coordination together. So having, you know, just a little bit of experience and touching on it will kind of put things into perspective in their head. So then they can kind of see if it's something they want to pursue or not. But if you know off the bat that you're gonna like, I want to do this, I'm, you know, go and get a nice airbrush. My first airbrush was the Badger 105. You know, came in those triangle boxes.
It's still a pretty popular program.
Yeah. So, you know, that was my very first airbrush. Back then, there was no cheap airbrushes either. It was like you bought a good airbrush or nothing. You know, there was no Harbor Freight. Yeah, there was nothing. You know, so it was that whole thing. But if it's something you want to try, or maybe you're just gonna like, you know, spray some color on some cake or something like that, you know, having one of those cheap options is pretty good. But, you know, I would recommend any of the brands, whatever's available to you. I know in some countries, the tax rates and import rates are ridiculous.
I know you already tried the new 4050.
Yeah, we have tons of the 4050, yeah.
Using it?
Yeah.
Priming and everything? So
we actually use it even for artwork like this. We mix it in with the paint. I don't know if you've done that yet.
Yeah.
So we... Yeah, so I like doing about a 15% additive along with my paint and reducer. and it really helps everything stick. So like one of the biggest examples is laying down tape. So after you use the 40-50, you're able to put tape over it and then peel it off and not have that Createx peel off. That's like one of the biggest examples, because before, you know, sometimes it would, you know, peel back or something. Yeah, but after you use the 40-50, it helps a lot.
And so you, as you mentioned, you show some of your designs. You started with the t-shirts. It was probably still before COVID, one of the biggest things you do. But you also do cars. There's 2 cars you're gonna show it on the video.
Yeah.
Seeing outside, you do motorcycles, I can see. So whatever airbrush is your preferences, any favorite things to airbrush?
So I like to airbrush on canvases, but that's not really. It doesn't pay the bills, is what I say. So like
that's an art work. You have to find customers.
Yeah, finding customers. I like, you know, bringing pretty much anything. So I like a challenge. So when anybody brings something small, that's always kind of fun. Like small shoes, like baby shoes, and they want something on it. That's always fun. But really, I just like to paint everything. I'm happy as long as I have an airbrush in my hand and I'm just spraying some paint. It's a good day.
Have you done any murals, like the big paintings?
Yeah, so I would have been able to take you over there, but there's a big, huge mural at one of the dispensaries out here, but it just got covered because the dispensary.
Send some pictures we can include it in the video.
I'll send you the pictures. So.
Well, awesome. Well, good talking to you. Let's continue with some projects in our hands. I'm gonna pull out a few things to just show you and, you know, see what you think of them.
Cool.
All right, cool.
Sounds good.
Yeah, my whole airbrushing career has been based off of skulls, basically. When I lived in Denver, right, we were doing the market. And I say we because it was a couple of us that were airbrushing back then. And through that, I met some other airbrushers. And there's actually, here in Colorado, there's about 4 or 5 mics at Airbrush, which has always made it kind of hard when dealing with people. Yeah, back then we were doing jobs for the Harley Outpost in Denver, working alongside Cisco. And it seemed like every day it was just a skull, you know, a different skull, just, you know, a Harley skull, a skull with a name, a skull with this, just a skull. And I couldn't tell you how many bikes just got the same basic skull because they would see it and, you know, they had a little pamphlet book or whatever, and they would see it and they'd be like, that one. And it was just like every other bike had that same exact skull, just kind of, you know, a little variation. And I say it on my channel all the time, you know, I could do skulls and stuff all day and just get all the views, but that would just not serve any purpose. My point is to kind of teach people and get more people involved, and also spread a little bit of helpful knowledge, because there's a lot of people that get an airbrush and then don't know where to start or don't know how to build up the skill. Right? It's just like the first time you hold a pencil, you don't just hold the pencil and automatically know how to shade something in or know how to, you know, apply lines or stippling or anything like that to provide texture. It's all kind of as you go along. But if you have somebody to kind of teach you the right way or the way to go about it, it helps a lot.
Okay, you obviously have the freehand skills. What do you think of stencils? Using stencils at all?
So yeah, I actually use a lot of stencils, and I sell stencils too. This is one of our waterflex stencils right here. But I'm not a big believer in like using the stencil to provide like, the main image. But we have done videos with HD stencils. I don't know if you've been familiar with them. But as far as for mapping out a design.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Exactly, using for mapping and just make the artwork stand out just with your, you know,
there's
different shades, different accents.
There's nothing wrong with that for sure, because we all do it, whether you use a projector or some other form of way of mapping. You know, it's still getting you a map is really
exactly. That's a good recommendation, using for map.
That and textures, right? So there's certain things you could do with a stencil you can't really just do with an airbrush. So one of the things I like to do is take in like a stencil like this that has dots, and if you spray and move kind of around, you get these, you know, weird spatter kind of texture effects, which you can't really. Accomplishing this with the airbrush freehand, it takes a lot more work. So you'd have to sit there and kind of, you'd have to have the right tone, and then you'd have to kind of build in that texture there, which would just take, as you can see, a lot longer. So doing something like this, which just makes it super easy.
I agree. Yeah. And so you have your stencils, you manufacture them yourself here?
Yeah. We should do it right there.
Okay. And where can we purchase them?
So we sell the stencils through mikesbrush.com, so through our website. And that's currently the only way to order them.
Okay.
We kind of make them to order. We don't have just a bunch of stencils laying around. So whenever somebody places an order, we make it and then we ship it out to them. I found that that's the best way because I don't have A, time, or B, the money to just print out a whole ton of them. And
nice. Space for stocking them as well.
Yeah, space for stocking them as well. We're quickly running out of space. So. That's wiping too. That's from painting in my urethane days, because I don't know if you've ever sprayed with urethane paint, but when the little overspray kind of goes out to the side, it dries up before it could wipe off that little. And it's just kind of a muscle reflex now when I'm painting, is it just wipe it. I don't know why.
Where are you taking airbrushes for you from? You just buying them?
Yeah, so we just buy our airbrushes, the ones for review. I think that it just keeps the review a little bit more honest. And I also have to give the opinion of it costs me money and how much value do I think am I getting out of it compared to something else. And when Segola sent their airbrushes, they were free. And it's hard to gauge, right? Like if I was gonna buy that or this, it's hard to gauge if I didn't spend any money on it. Right? It's just like, oh, it's free. I could just paint it. It's easy. It's nice. So that's the whole thing. But their airbrushes are really nice, just in general. But it does give me that extra little bit of kind of insight when I purchase them myself. So I try to keep the reviews honest, and I show it. Like when that Sotar showed it broken, I was upset. I was actually upset. I was like, man, there's no way. Like I spent all this money. There's no reason why it should be broken like that. Right? And if I would have received it for free, I probably would have sent an email. They would have just sent a replacement, and I wouldn't have gone through that whole shebang. But having to spend more money to fix it right when I just bought it, it creates that whole,
No, I hear you. Yeah, I get it.
So it has to be real, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Really talented freehand, yeah.
So what's Artem?
Artem, yes.
How do you spell it?
A-R-T-E-M. It's Artem.
Artem. So let's see here. A-R-T-E-M.
That's awesome. Man, it's really cool. Yeah. It's really talented, really nice. I like it.
Thank you. Where you're not going to be doing every single detail at that scale, you're going to be doing it big, right? So you'd be doing a bigger skull. This would make it really easy and fast because it's spraying out a lot of paint. You're able to cover a pretty good area.
Bigger scale.
Yeah, but for something big, because this is still obviously pretty small for it. But on something big, like if you're gonna do a bunch of little texture, you know, it would be like a skin texture on a face, but you're making a big face, like it's perfect. So for like walls, graffiti artists, like if you're transitioning from graffiti to airbrushing, this would probably feel a lot more natural, especially because you're using your finger and not, you know, not so much this way, but like, you know, it just makes it easier to control. So, thanks for dropping by. Yeah, I like how I could read my signature. I can't read this. We should get the picture on that side, yeah.
Social distance. We should make a 6 feet flag. So.